Thanks for tuning in to If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo podcast on the Overreaction Sports Network powered by Believe. And now your hosts, former Director of Football Administration for the Buffalo Bills, Don Purdy, and former coaching assistant for the Buffalo Bills, Josh Cormier.
Welcome to If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo. It's been a long time, Don. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Joe Miller. And so Bedlam. Will it be Bedlam 7 o'clock on Sunday night?
Right, 7:30, 7:35. Right, games kickoffs 4:25. So
4:25, yeah. It's a night game, essentially, yes.
Yeah, before we get started talking about the Chiefs game, Don and I are back for the second half of the season. We're using the Kansas City game here as the jumping off point to take us through our third playoff run, what looks like as the If the Walls Could Talk of Buffalo.
Jumping off or jumping on?
Jumping on point, jumping off point, jumping on. Yeah. So, Don, maybe for anybody who's listening to us for the first time, could you just give a reminder of who you are and what you did?
My title was the All-Being Master of Time, Space, and Dimension.
Or
Director of Football Administration. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds even more impressive. From 2005 to 2017, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, half of 2017. I wasn't there for the season of 2017, but I was with Sean McDermott for a while. That's a whole story for another day. Yeah.
Sure. All right. And I was there from 1997 through 2001, and I was a coaching assistant under Wade Phillips, and I was hired actually by Don Purdy in the marketing department, and then I was fired not by Don Purdy. So thank you very much.
Well, you're leaving out a huge part of the fact that you were in the coaching staff. Yes.
Yeah. So. Locker room, sideline, all that good stuff. So I'm sure most of our audience is well aware of that. But just for anybody, as we've taken our kind of mid-season break, for anybody watching us for the first time. So Don, here we go. Big game, obviously. Bills, Chiefs. And when we talked the other day, it was kind of obvious where we would, kind of get back into things here and maybe just talk about some of the bigger regular season games in Bills history, what it was like around the office during any big game, whether it be regular season, playoff, Super Bowl, what you remember about those times, maybe what it's like around One Bills Drive this week. And then maybe, just a couple stories about games you remember, Chiefs rivalry games, etc. So when we talk big game, right, and you were there, 25 plus years, Super Bowl, all that, what does a big game at One Bills Drive make you think of immediately?
The first game is the 1990 Dolphins game where Frank Reich had to play. And the game, in terms of what it meant to win or lose, was playoff seeding. And, during the later years, it's funny because I was looking at the Bills schedule earlier and trying to project, if the Bills don't win this, what does it mean for them? And then I saw, there's the Patriots. Mm-hmm. They get to play the Patriots twice, whereas in a lot of the years where I was director of football administration, it was like, oh boy, we're running ahead of schedule. We're 5-3, we're 6-5, 7-6, but lurking at the end of the schedule is the 6-time Super Bowl champion Patriots. And so no matter what, it's still, you know what I mean? So now it's so funny to have that flipped.
Right. So, you look at the schedule and 2 of the last 3 weeks are against the Patriots. And you're right. 15 years ago, you'd almost chalk those up as 2 losses. And I kind of wanted to ask you that because there have been obviously so many big games played at Highmark Stadium, so many big games the Bills have been in the 80s, in the 90s, not, so many in the 2000s and the 2010s, but now again in the 2020s under Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane. This one to me feels a little different. Yes, it's for playoff seeding. Yes, it's for a chance to be the 1 seed, even though if it's an outside shot. Yes, it's another game in the AFC East. This one seems kind of personal, and the only thing I was going to compare it to is trying to get over the New England hump, or in the early 80s before both of us were there, when they just could never beat Miami. They went famously went 0 for the decade against the Dolphins.
Right.
Do you ever remember talking to anybody who was there, longer than you when you got there in the late 80s as an intern? Do you remember talking to people around the team or, maybe Ralph Wilson himself about what it felt like to finally get over that Miami hump in the early 80s after literally going 0-20 against them in the 70s?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were coaches on the staff when I came in that had endured exactly what you're talking about with the Dolphins, and every time it was Miami week, they were like, "It's Miami week. Like, you should know what that means." I don't know what it meant for me. I was just kind of trying to do my job the same way, but it obviously the message was this game means more, and for Miami, then it didn't matter really what the standings were, but I think what makes this week with the Chiefs, for this Bills team and the fan base like so critical is that, yes, they have to get over the hump. Chiefs are 9-0. They've won 2 in a row. You've got the 13 seconds. And, if the team can pull it off, then, for the rest of the season, you're just looking to tie them. You have the tiebreaker and get the Patriots twice. But, big games during the regular season, they happen when the schedule makers make them happen. And, one of the really big ones was 2004. And you've brought this up about the Bills team. Something I never knew was that defense was historically one of the best defenses that the league had ever seen. But at the end of the year, and we talked to Ryan Lindell, came down to a field goal attempt that he missed in late fourth quarter. And it didn't matter for the Steelers, but they had a coming out party for Willie Parker. And Luke Russert talked about that being like one of the games that really sticks in his craw, because if that Bills team had made the playoffs, they could have been like one of those Ravens or Tampa teams that would have gone all the way, but didn't even get in. So
the NFL was different back then, right? Like a defense, like you said, like that Tampa team and the Baltimore team and back-to-back years in 01 and 02, a defense could still carry you to a title. The Tennessee team that we lost to in the Music City Miracle was, such a dominant defensive team, and they got within, 1 yard of winning the Super Bowl. So you mentioned that Pittsburgh game, the last game of the 04 season, and talking about this game again, to me it just feels different, right? Do I think they're going to get the 1 seed if they win this game? No, I don't. Does this game mean all that much in terms of what happens in January? Clearly not, because the Bills have beaten them 3 times in the regular season and then, can't get over the hump of the playoffs. When you're working there, when you're there every day, when you talked to a coach that talked about it being Miami week back in 1980 after losing 20 in a row, when New England came to town in that famous Fitzpatrick comeback game, what's it like when you're there and, like, Dad's coming to town, Big Brother's coming to town, right?
Big Brother.
Big Brother's coming to town.
Yeah, the one that gives you the noogie and
right. And the Chiefs came to Buffalo last year in the playoff game and took the Bills lunch again. So as somebody in the front office, from the ticket office person to the training staff to the cafeteria worker to the stadium ops guys, like, does anything materially change this week?
This is going to sound kind of controversial or whatever, but what you look at is like, you look at the other team, you look at the Chiefs, and like, who are they missing? Like, you're not supposed to root for injuries, but if somebody happens to be injured, you're like, hey, they're not going to have that guy. They're not going to have that guy. Maybe we can exploit it. There's not much else to say because the coaching staff, as you know, is doing everything they can. And I have a question for you after I say this, but you're just looking for any reason to think that, you trust that the Bills will be ready. But is there something on the other team that you can exploit? Maybe they're down their starting left tackle. Oh boy, we're going to send heat from that side. And but I would love to hear like from your standpoint what you heard, on the coaching floor about that, because there is I will debunk. Coach speak is so frustrating, and
Right.
McDermott, Sean, I love Sean McDermott and everything, but all the coaches in the league pretty much do it. But yeah, they look ahead. This game has been circled. Yeah, there's extra preparation that goes into it, and so.
Yeah, it's interesting because they definitely have used periods during, either training camp or, during the week they had kind of the mini bye where they had the 10 days off between games. You can't tell me that they haven't used periods in practice to practice some Chiefs stuff, to look ahead. Some of the multitude of quality control guys and analysts and all in the analytics department, I'm sure, has spent more time on this game than maybe any other. And it's not ridiculous, but at the same time, it's definitely highlighted. I'm sure the coaches are all staying late this week. The expectation, I'm sure, is that you might sleep in the office on Tuesday night, or you're going to be there that extra hour or 2 hours, and basically accomplish nothing more than you'd accomplish any other week. But if nothing else, it makes you feel a little bit better, and you want to kind of. It's that keeping up with the Joneses thing where, well, he's staying late, so I need to stay late. And if he's staying late, then I certainly don't want to be the first one out of the office. And I found myself a lot of times just staring, waiting for somebody else to break the ice and leave, kind of like at a party before you'd go home, when I literally had nothing else to do. So, so if you're, the football staff is kind of, insulated, right? The coaching staff and whatever is kind of insulated from the rest of the organization, on the second floor there. And everybody kind of knows to, that's a no-fly zone probably this week for anybody not, needed to be over there. Did you notice, is there more tension in the cafeteria? Is there more tension in the elevator? Are people crabby? Are people nervous? Are people excited? Like, what was it like in the salary cap world, in the workman's comp world, before our Patriots game when they were coming to Buffalo?
Well, I mean, during that period, it was, keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully there's something that we can, find a way to exploit. It's a big deal, but you don't want to seem uncool by, talking about it too much. Hey, big game this week, huh?
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. Right. You can say that at the supermarket, or, where I work at Dave and Adams, you can talk about that. But if you're in the building and if you go into the elevator, hey, big game this week, man, you need to get kicked in the nuts, right? Like who's doing that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's a bad look. I mean, duh. As I'm sitting in my chair at the Armstrong's barbershop, I have my ear at 3 and 9 o'clock, and you could just hear Mahomes, Kelsey. What I don't hear there is Taylor Swift, and but there's no Taylor Swift factor on the coaching staff. They don't care who's there, but the fans might want to have that as extra motivation. I don't know, that's a new concept for me, but maybe there's some reality to it. Yeah,
you were in the NFL bubble too long to care about all of the nonsense
right. NFL bubble, right, exactly.
Away from the field, and during the season, it truly is. Even with social media now, and even those guys being much more engaged on there than we ever would have back in the day, there's still a bubble. And I would sincerely hope that the players and the coaches and stuff are truly locked in. And around, like you said, around the office, maybe you stay an extra half hour. Maybe you're doing the, oh boy, if Jim Overdorf's not leaving early this week, maybe I shouldn't leave early this week, right? And just kind of locked in. And I keep going back to like that Miami in the early 80s. And then, it's the Pistons and the Bulls, right? It's Michael Jordan having to finally go through Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn. And it's that story in sports so many times where, the team has to get over the hump and beat the team that they can never see. It's the Colts against the Patriots in the 2000s.
I heard about that. I knew about it. I was reminded of that game on the radio today, and it was a great reference.
Yeah,
I didn't realize the Colts were down like 20 points or something.
21. It was 21-3. 21-3.
Yeah, wow.
Here's the difference, though, Don. That was in the AFC Championship game, and I would argue that no matter what happens in this game, short of injury, if the Bills win 35-7, if they just blow the doors off the Chiefs, if the Chiefs blow the doors off the Bills, it kind of doesn't matter to me. We've seen this movie before.
I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you on that, though, because of what happened last year, what I saw, and you said it earlier, the number one seed,
right?
Only one team gets a bye. And the Bills as the 2 seed last year, which was amazing because they had to make that run just to, win the division, and then they ended up getting the 2. But they suffered some injuries in the wild card game that there were players that they could have, that might have helped them, and a bye might have helped them. I don't know, what the timelines were for those injuries, but I feel like if nothing else, what the 1 seed offers is a 1 week rest.
Of course.
And that seems like a big deal.
That is a big deal. I guess my working assumption is that even if the Bills win this game, short of a Patrick Mahomes injury, the Chiefs, because of the schedule they have remaining after this week, and their Houdini-like abilities to win every single game they play, I guess I'm just kind of chalking it up that the Chiefs will be the 1 seed either way. So you're right, of course. If this game propels the Bills to be the 1 seed, of course it matters. Yeah. You want to win. Of course you want to win every game. I guess my only point is that we've already been down this road, where the Bills have taken the Chiefs in the regular season, out physicaled them. They beat them in Arrowhead, like 2-3 times now. The Bills have been last year. The Chiefs weren't the 1 seed either. The Chiefs were the 2 seed, or I'm sorry, the 3 seed. Bills were 2, and Baltimore was 1. Right. Baltimore was 1. So you're absolutely right about being healthy. The 1 seed, the bye, obviously helps that. I guess I'm just thinking from a psychological standpoint rather than a standing standpoint, that I'm not sure that anything that happens in this game is going to carry over to if and when they play again in January.
Regardless of where it is.
At this point, the Chiefs walked in here and won last year. The Bills won in Arrowhead last year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that home field advantage doesn't matter, but when you have those 2 quarterbacks on the field, you can win anywhere. I feel like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes could win in the Middle East. If there was a game in the Middle East, they could go there and win. So
do they have Israelis Air Force?
Yes, right. So it's like I don't think the home field matters all that much. Of course the bye does, but man, I as much as I want to get excited for this game, I feel like it's a movie we've already seen before.
Yeah. There's some new scenes coming on too, and I remember a season. I can't remember what it was, but the Bills had a good team, and it was probably during the drought. And at the end of the year, it came 1 game away from getting in and maybe making a run, and there was all this remembrance of, remember opening day, we were playing the Jets and we had them beat. And the game got tied, and in overtime,
kick return touchdown, right?
Kick return touchdown. And, okay, we're 0-1, they're 1-0. But at the end, it came back to really hurt them. And it was week 1. And this is week 11. And, I guess, I think back to your first game, regular season game, which we've talked about a lot, home against Tennessee. There was a revenge factor. But the fact that the Bills beat Tennessee that day could have mattered, if not for a game that wasn't really on the radar against Tampa, where you had all those injuries. And I mean, they all matter, but this week has all of the drama that you would want. And I'm actually, I gotta say, I'm not surprised at you, but I'm surprised you have a real football intellect and beyond football. But as I turned on the radio And I don't know if people are trying to talk themselves out of how big this game is, but I hear a lot from media figures who I somehow kind of, usually scratch my heads at, but they're like taking this in stride and taking the same position that you brought up here about this game. And in terms of, okay, if we don't win this, it's not the end of the world. And maybe a big part of it is because the huge lead in the division. So, you're going to be in the top 4. And then Houston, but yeah, there's a real measured approach I'm impressed with.
It just feels like they're going to play again. Like you said, the Chiefs are not losing the AFC West, and the Bills are not losing the AFC East, and you don't know how the playoff matchups are going to go, et cetera, et cetera. But it just, where in the past it was a big Bills game to get in the playoffs, right? Like they needed to win these games to get in. Now at 8-2, best start since the last Super Bowl year in 1993. This game isn't nearly as critical to win the division. This just feels like Big Brother coming to town, and you want to punch him in the face. You want to
government.
Punch him in the face.
Yeah, it's just he's
giving
you that noogie or the
right. So it feels like a more of a psychologically important game than a standings important game, and I guess I don't buy that when it comes to the Chiefs, because we've seen that now the past few years, that regular season results do not guarantee playoff success.
Very true. You know what? As I looked at the schedule and the standings today before we came on this podcast, who's a real fly in the ointment here is the Steelers.
Yeah, shocking, 7-2, right?
Yeah, I mean, we keep talking about Baltimore, and the Bills have, the Ravens have the tiebreaker, but what are they doing here?
Well, that's your boy. That's your favorite quarterback, Russell Wilson. And I guess I would take my chances playing them in the playoffs.
Of course. That's what I was leading toward. Like, would you sign up for that?
Of course.
Yes.
Maybe not round 1. Well, I mean, maybe round 1. I think we were actually power ranking the other day. One of my friends and I, we were power ranking who you'd want to see them play in the playoffs. And I there's an argument to be made from me that I think the Ravens are the worst matchup for them, even worse than Kansas City. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we'll be able to know more on Sunday. When you talk about important games that you don't necessarily think are important in the moment, as opposed to the big games that have all the hype. 2 that came to mind. One, ironically, last week, with the Bills in Indy, and talking about the last time that the Bills had won in Indy was in 1998. That was the game. They were 1-3. Kind of a throwaway game if you look at it, from afar. A road game in Indy, in between San Francisco at home, who was obviously great with Steve Young, and Jacksonville at home, coming off AFC Championship game appearance with Mark Brunell. That's the game where Rob Johnson first got hurt. Doug Flutie comes in, wins the game to go to 2-3. Flutie Mania starts, saves the season, saves the franchise, gets me a full-time job. Truly. And this is a throwaway game in week 5 against, Peyton Manning rookie year Indy, who stinks at the time. Yeah. So you're right. The other one that came to mind is back in 2019, Josh Allen's first start against the Vikings on the road. I'm sorry, 2018. You're 0-2 already, and you're like a 16 or 17 point dog at Minnesota. And he has that famous play where he leaps over the linebacker in the first quarter, and you're like, oh, this guy's got it. Like, this guy, you could tell immediately. And again, another one of those kind of throwaway games that in the grand scheme of things, it didn't matter a ton for that season, but turns out to be like a turning point for the franchise.
Absolutely. And, fast forward to the end of that season, and Eric Wood and Kyle Williams and guys that had never made the playoffs did make the playoffs. And way beyond that was the fact that it gave the team confidence that, going forward, we got a guy. Allen is a special player, and I don't. Maybe this is a show for another time, but you look at his window. I still think obviously there's plenty left in his window, but those kind of plays are. I remember Elway in the Super Bowl when he jumped up and got spun around like a helicopter.
Yes.
And the announcers were like, oh my gosh, that's the John Elway of old. He's pulling everything from the past to be able to make that kind of play. So, you know, there's a fragile situation to all this, but Bills fans should be excited that, you know, there's still a lot there with him, and around him is still a lot of questions. Like Cooper, is he going to be a factor? Like, good start, but it's good point.
That was Elway against the Packers, and he helicoptered down at like the Packers, 3-yard line, and that was their first Super Bowl win. Obviously, they went back to back, and I actually made the comp not that long ago that, boy, Josh Allen might end up having a career like John Elway, right? Clear-cut Hall of Famer, you know, climbed the mountain how many times before finally getting there. Ironically, for John Elway, he wasn't the focal point of the offense by the time they finally won. It was Terrell Davis, and it was the running game. And I just always remember, who was it, Pat Bowlen, the owner, holding the trophy and saying, "This one's for John." And I got emotional because that was supposed to be Jim Kelly and the Bills, right? That was supposed to be the one final run, and, you know, you lose 4 Super Bowls. And I very vividly remember watching that Super Bowl thinking,
what year was that?
That was 97.
Yeah,
because they won 97 season, 98 Super Bowl. They won back-to-back 98 Super Bowl and 99.
Right. Yeah.
So I very vividly remember that, and how quickly a window can close for a quarterback and a team. You know, Dan Marino famously made the Super Bowl as a rookie and never got back again. Yeah,
I mean, his stats went through the roof. They're, you know, barely touched, but as a team, you know, they weren't able to get there or get near it. So
do you so let's say that the Bills win Sunday. What's it like in the building 45 minutes after they win?
It is as exciting as you can imagine, and you were there too. I mean, think about the opener of, you know, you saw it. You came back, and we just beat the team that ripped our hearts out on national TV with a home run throwback. But I guess what's kind of cruel about the industry is that, you know, you have not even 24 hours to really celebrate it. You know, the fans do, but inside the building, you're right back to work. But it is great to build on. It is like, you got some extra juice to, you know, work toward an opportunity that 24 hours ago you didn't know existed, or you knew it existed, but you couldn't know the outcome.
You know, they have a bye after this game.
It's big.
So it's going to set the tone for now. Do you think that there's any world? So let's say Don Purdy was still working at the Bills in the same position. Do you think that your days off for the bye weekend, would it all be affected by the outcome of the game?
A little bit, yeah. You know, the coaches still like to dangle that carrot to the team that if you win, we're going to give you the whole time off. Where they actually, you know, could be what, you know, 5 days. It could be that they were intending to give you to practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and give you Thursday to Sunday to come back injury or come back on Monday. But, you know, on the schedule that everyone gets, you're off, you know, for like 4 days. But if you win, you get an extra day.
Yeah, Victory Monday.
Yeah, and that that matters too, because you have to.
What would you normally get off? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday bye week?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yep.
Okay, so maybe if they win a big game the week before, maybe you sneak out early Wednesday or something.
That sounds right.
A little reward, a little, you know, your dictator in chief above you there might have given you an extra couple hours. Something like that. Yeah, and I got to tell you, like, if they win this game, I feel like if you're Coach McDermott, maybe you give them the full week.
Maybe, yeah. I mean,
you know, you're 9-2. Go clear your heads. Go get away from football for a while. Like,
a fantastic record with, the crown jewel of a victory that keeps you in the hunt for the number 1 seed.
And a strong reminder that you didn't win the Super Bowl yet. Like, this is the Super Bowl of the regular season, but boy, it's not the final prize, clearly. And I feel like there's a maturity now, and especially with the quarterback, that nobody in that building, I think, is going to be under any illusions that beating the Chiefs in Week 11 means anything more than beating the Chiefs in Week 11.
Yeah, and it's funny because you talk about the veteran leadership on this team, or you were alluding to it without saying it, but I think Poyer and Hyde, and they're not here anymore. Milano's coming back from injury. Trey White's not here, so I guess they're a little bit younger. But man, one player that it's hard to believe I'm even saying this, that might be getting not enough credit, is Damar Hamlin. And I'm sorry, there's 5 games left, and I know that there could be some sweep that it looks like he has the angle on a running back, and but he takes it all the way down for 50 yards, and oh my gosh, but man, he's making plays, he's not making mistakes, and
he has a nose for the ball for sure.
Yeah.
And like you said, he's athletically limited, and you've seen it on a couple runs. You saw it last week with Jonathan Taylor. You saw it in the Baltimore game where Derrick Henry beat him to the outside. And he's not the most athletic player in the world, but I think he fits the scheme really well. And I actually saw a comp that I was gonna ask you about, and I thought you'd kind of laugh. He's got a nose for the ball, clearly. He's very sound assignment wise. He's a good tackler, and he's kind of the perfect center fielder. And somebody actually made the comparison to Mark Kelso.
That's pretty good.
Mark Kelso was never the most athletic player on the field.
That's right. But I remember in high school basketball, we had a really good team my senior year. We ended up 22-2. We had a 20-game winning streak, the longest streak in the state that year. But we decided to every once in a while put on a 2-2-1 full court press, and I was the one in the back, and I loved it because all the way across the court you would read. It was only after a made basket, and you would read the eyes of the guy taking it out of bounds. After you scored, there was a little bit of excitement, and they were nervous, and you could just, if you tried to read the guy's eyes to see where he might be faking here but going here, and if you had any little read on it and made a break toward it, you had a chance to break up the play and maybe bring it back the other way. But I feel like Mark Kelso might have been one of the smartest players ever on the Bills, and Hamlin, because like you said, he's limited athletically, and oh, by the way, what happened to him? How do you come back from that mentally and psychologically? Wow, what he's doing to make an impact and be relevant and to make an impact is just so impressive.
The storybook ending is that he has a pick to seal.
Right? Man,
that's the terrible Disney ending that never will happen. It's just way too much, right? It's the ultimate ending. I was going to ask you.
I'm gonna a downer is to think about that fake punt last year.
Oh God!
It all could have ended right there.
Yeah, sure could have. Yeah, they got bailed out with the fumble through the end zone.
Right.
That's the quietest I've ever heard the stadium.
Oh, you were there. That's right.
I was there, Don. It was you could have heard a pin drop. It was. I forgot about that. That was truly terrible. A couple more things before we go. And before we see everybody again next week, please like and subscribe to If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo on the Overreaction Buffalo Network. I have grown, as a refurbished, Bills fan here, a reestablished Bills fan, reestablished.
I'm going to go with reconstructed.
Reconstruct, sure. Any of those re's that you want to use. My favorite player on the current Bills roster, by quite a distance, is Taron Johnson.
You've said that before many times.
I love watching Taron Johnson.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, as somebody who traveled with the team, was a director of football administration, not from a personal point of view, not from saw him in the office, whatever. Give me 2 or 3 guys who you just loved watching play football, not how you felt about them off the field, during your time as the director of football administration? Like, who were 2 or 3 guys who you just loved watching play football, who might not have been, the biggest superstars on the team?
Wow. The easy answer is Thurman Thomas. I'll just drop it there because we all know what he did, but he was even better than that.
Yes.
I'm going to go with George Wilson.
George Wilson, that's a good one.
Yeah, a guy that we had on our program that, shared a story about, being a receiver, knew he was going to get cut. John Guy told him, you have one chance to stay on this team. I talked with the coaches. That's to become a safety. And to watch him, he's like, does he have a shot at doing this? And kind of everything we just talked about that football instincts he had. So I would always keep an eye on him. Man, another
go ahead.
An exciting player just popped in my head. Was Derek Holmes. I don't know why.
I loved watching Derek Holmes run.
Yeah. He was like breaking all the rules. He would carry the ball in his right hand when he was going through the middle on the left side, and like, no, you're gonna fumble. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm gonna run for a long time. So
anytime he cut, his arms would go like a windmill to kind of go around the corner. He was just fun to watch.
Yeah. If you had prepped me for this, I could come up with more, but those are just the ones that popped in my head.
Yeah,
so. How about you?
I've just really grown to enjoy watching Taron Johnson play football. Like, I even on run fits, like, he's a super smart defender. He's fearless. He's small, and they can play nickel the entire game because he's willing to stick his nose in there, and he's a sure tackler. And their defense without him is not nearly obviously as good as it is with him.
He's a difference maker. Absolutely. You just compared Hamlin to Kelso, and given that our show is predicated on the present, but also the past, who do you compare Taron Johnson to?
Antoine Winfield.
As a DB. Oh, nice.
Antoine Winfield.
Good call.
Sure tackler, nose for the ball. Not the flashiest guy in the world, not, obviously has a couple of really memorable pick sixes for the Bills. Not a huge stat guy, and I know Antoine played outside, different NFL now, having Taron in the slot corner, but a guy who should make the Pro Bowl every year, and a difference maker. Antoine Winfield made so many plays, so many plays, and if the ball was on his side of the field, you just felt like he was going to make the tackle every single time.
Yeah, and if not just a tackle, but like a tackle at the right time, where he would jar the ball loose, and the receiver would think he was going to bring it in, but he would get back. I loved watching Antoine Winfield. I loved being around Antoine Winfield. The total class act when I was there. His son is now in the league. Before I let you go, Don, did you see who had a really, really rough game for the Miami Hurricanes in their defensive backfield last week? Speaking of sons of former Bills alumni. Oh boy. I saw that Miami blew a game that they were like number 5, and no, I didn't. I did not see that.
Daryl Porter Jr.
Oh, so he was with the Saints. His father was with the Saints, right?
Daryl Porter?
Yeah.
No, Daryl Porter was with the Bills. Yes.
Well, and the Saints, right?
Yes,
after the
Bills? The one who did not cover his lane during home run throwback.
Oh, gosh, Josh.
Daryl Porter. Number 22. He was there when I was there, and his son. You feel old when you are hearing the names of Junior, of a guy who when I was there, he was playing NFL football, and now his son is almost in the NFL. Antoine Winfield Jr. has obviously played for a while now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, I heard that name, and I just kind of cringed. I'm like, oh, God, we're old.
I have to confess that, and I understand why you couldn't forget that, but I had not remembered that Daryl Porter Sr. was the one that didn't cover his lane on home.
Number 22. Number 22 in your program and number 1 in your heart. All right, before we go here, I need a score prediction and then a guarantee that if the Walls Could Talk of Buffalo, will be back next Friday as well.
We will. Score prediction. Why do you do this to me, man?
I'll go first if you want.
I hope I'm wrong.
I go 24-23 Chiefs.
Yeah, I was going to say like 28-21 Chiefs.
28-21
but
Chiefs.
as you said, it's okay.
Yeah.
They'll play each other again, and I hope we're both wrong, but
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. It's really good to be back.
Yes, it is.
I feel like this is a perfect time. Next week's the bye week. I'd like to talk to you about everything bye week related that goes on in the front office. We might have a special guest. And we're going to hopefully see everybody next Friday, and with the Bills sitting at 9-2 for the first time since 1993, which is kind of wild. Hopefully everybody likes and subscribes to If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo on YouTube and the Overreaction podcast network. Thanks, Don.
Good night, Josh. Thanks. Go Bills.